Welcome to another episode of Always Be Connecting, the podcast that looks at human connection in business and work across your 5 key audiences, which are prospects, clients, team, community, and industry. This week, we are talking to a business coach that works in mindfulness and mastery, and that is Linda Wallace from Linda Wallace Coaching. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for coming on, Linda. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got here, what that path looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a background about 15 years in marketing and advertising. And a couple of years ago, like many others, I was extremely burnt out. And I started working with a life coach myself. I'd worked with different exec coaches over the years, but I quit a role that I'd started quite recently, and I didn't know what was next. I just knew that what I was doing wasn't working and I wasn't happy. And I think I just reached a point in my career as well where I felt like I'd climbed the ladder and achieved a lot of what I wanted to achieve, but it just wasn't hitting the spot in terms of fulfillment. And I felt as though I'd lost my why, which is why I engaged a life coach. And I worked with her for 6 months, and that really transformed my life. So I had done quite a lot of work over the last, 2 decades in terms of personal and professional development. But this really intense period really led me to a different place. And I realized that a lot of what I had become so passionate about in marketing was the leadership component and building connections with my teams directly, but then also cross-functionally as well. And sort of the deeper I went into the work, the more I realized that my passion really sat more with the people than with the marketing. And I went away and became a certified Somatic coach, which is mind-body interconnection. And now I offer programs in that space to people in a professional setting, but also just in a life, in a personal development, perspective as well.
So what is the mind-body connection? Like, how do you explain that to somebody with more of a right side brain?
Yeah, so essentially it is bringing conscious awareness to unconscious thought. So about 90% of the decisions we make each day are basically made on autopilot. And similar to what I experienced, where I was sort of like, I've ended up in this role, I've done it for 15 years, but is it making me happy? How did I end up here? Yeah. Really stopping and saying, why am I here? And really going back and looking at all of the reasons that led you to be there and making a decision to start living a more intentional life that were more aligned to what I truly wanted rather than past conditioning about what I thought would make me successful or what would make me happy, and looking at the realities of what those things are. So most simply, I do think that mind-body interconnection is trusting that our sensations and what goes on within our body actually gives us a gateway to tap into our emotional well-being and harnessing that to make better decisions for the day-to-day life we live rather than just live in autopilot.
And what was missing for you? What did you reconnect with?
Yeah, what was missing for me, I think, in terms of where I was at in my career personally, I felt like I was missing impact. So really making an impact on people's lives. It's something that I'm so passionate about. And I felt as though I was always limited. I could influence the experience that people in my team have or people that were coming into contact with me each day. But I felt, such a desire to understand why people did the things they did or were the way they were. And I could only sort of touch the surface. And I wasn't actually that passionate about the marketing. I enjoyed growing a business but I sort of enjoyed seeing how that impacted people rather than, just the making of the money. And so I really had to I guess, shift the way, I was working on a day-to-day basis so I could harness more of that actually understanding and working with people rather than developing campaigns to make money.
Yeah. It's hard though. It's hard to find impact
Yeah,
in
it's really
anything.
it's really hard, because it's often not prioritized by businesses as well, or impact is looked at, just in terms of financial metrics.
Yeah.
Uh, there's that old saying, look after the people and the numbers will take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not, depends on where the business is at in their growth, depends on who's at the top, who are the influencers, what are the drivers, but I do think there's a lot of truth to it, but it's not quite that simple.
Well, it's funny when you were saying that, I was thinking, well, you want to make impact with people rather
Mm.
than spreadsheets. So,
Yeah,
like, what is it all for if it's not for people?
that's it. Yeah, like what sits behind the spreadsheets, what sits behind the numbers, more people, more
Yeah.
lives. It's got to, right? Otherwise, exactly, what are we doing it for?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little about the one-to-one coaching,
Yeah.
um, mindfulness and mastery.
Yeah. So essentially, the way I work is I offer a 3-month program with people. They would come to me, and it's generally something, a lot of people say something's missing, or I'm burnt out, or, I just feel lost, or I'm stuck, or I know what I should be doing, but I just can't do it. Or I do it for a few days or a few weeks, and then I just don't know. Or a lot of people come to me similar to where I was, saying, I don't know what my purpose is. Like, I've just done this for so long, I wouldn't know what else to do. Like, can you help me? And so we explore that. So what we would do is, it's also, some people come to me saying, I don't think I need therapy, but I know that I need help, because I can't work out what to do next, which is really where this coaching space plays in. I'm not a mental health facilitator, but what I do is I work with clients to sort of co-create a set of goals. We would determine what those are at the start of the 3-month program. And I would create sort of the overarching vision. And every session we would meet for about an hour or so every week. And I would plan a session in line with whatever those goals are, whatever they're looking to achieve in that time. And it's not, it is much more like a partnership. So I will set them homework to work on between sessions. And then I say, reach out to me with insights, things that are coming up, voice note me, email me. And so that integration period happens for the whole way through that 12 weeks, not just the 1-hour sessions per
Mm.
week. And then, as we get towards the end of the 12 weeks, we might check in along the way. How are we looking compared to what the goals were? Are they still the goals? Have they changed in that time? Do we need to pivot? And then at the end of the 3 months, we would work out, depending on where they're at sort of in their journey and what's happening, do they want to keep working together on a monthly basis or quarterly? What will most serve them to keep them moving? Because you don't just get to the end of the program and go, I've done it, that's it,
Yeah,
no
yeah,
more.
yeah.
And we just work together in whatever way best serves them.
Because we all have a responsibility to be economically safe, to be able to pay our mortgages, go on holiday or whatever we like to do with our money. And that has a magnetism to a certain way of working, which doesn't necessarily include that impact. So I imagine to be able to reassess from that magnetism to a place where you are not just doing something that's economically sound, but something that has impact as well.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
quite, that's, that takes a little bit of resistance, like taking a separate path. I'm guessing. So like, how do you look after your health in resisting the wind,
It's really interesting. So a lot of this work, the style of work that I do, it's a really, might sound odd, but it's a gentle style of coaching. And I've worked with coaches before, who more have the mentality of push through and building resilience, etc. Style of coaching that I do, if there was resistance, the first thing that we do is work with the resistance. So we meet the resistance and we understand, and we get to understand why it's there. And this approach meets everything with curiosity, because when we're curious about something and we can understand why it's there, we can change our relationship with it. So instead of trying to get around it or bash it down and have this sort of fight flight almost relationship with the resistance, we say if we can meet it like a friend and understand why it's come to be there, and we can understand then what it needs for us to feel safe enough to work through it, it's a very different style of achieving things than just the push, push, push through, which is what a lot of us have grown up doing, or a lot of us are just used to throughout achieving at school and then, through corporate, etc. But it's a beautiful way and a much gentler way to get to the same place, often a lot faster and in a lot more harmoniously with yourself than, or, a lot of people just ignore, repress, etc. And what I found is it always comes back somewhere along the way if you don't address it. So that's, I guess, a bit about the approach that we take with resistance.
So I wonder if meeting that resistance, what is on the other side? What is, going towards the impact?
Yeah.
What's the personal benefit? Like, is there better connections with people by doing that? Is there better connections with the community? What's the why behind it?
I mean, my belief is that the resistance often exists because of a set of beliefs that we've inherited, often from childhood or adolescence, that aren't our own. And so when we meet the resistance, often it will have a voice that sounds like a mum or dad or somebody who was really influential. And so a lot of this work brings awareness to those beliefs that we've inherited. And then we can consciously question whether they're our beliefs, whether we do this role because we thought it would make somebody else happy or if it makes us happy. And then once we can understand where it's come from and ask ourselves whether we've carried it through from someone else, and if it's something we want to hang on to, if it's serving us or not anymore. And if we decide that it's something that actually we've carried for 30 years and that isn't serving us, it liberates us to make decisions that do align with our own values and our own desires. And then once we can live from that place of authenticity, it allows us to connect with other people on a totally different level.
Yeah. And what are some common misconceptions from your childhood? Because the one that comes to mind for me, and the one that I'm guilty of, is I'm out to prove a few teachers wrong. who said I wouldn't amount to anything, and like maybe that's a blessing and a curse. Who knows? What are some common things that you come across?
It's so interesting with that. So if I had a client come to me to talk about that, it would be so interesting to explore also all of the people who showed you along the way that wasn't true, but somewhere in you there was a 7-year-old or a 9-year-old that really remembered or interpreted what those teachers said, and how you've brought that through with you and how it has influenced so many of the decisions in your life. The stories we tell ourselves are basically the most detrimental thing that we have to our mental well-being, the stories we tell ourselves. Because I can promise you could go back to any of those teachers that said those things, and I bet you they wouldn't ever remember saying or thinking them. But we carry these words with us like our whole lives. And that to me is remarkable as well, the impact of our words. And sometimes it makes me think, wow, like, what are the words I've said to people in my life that I haven't realized have had an impact, positive or negative? Then I just think it's such an interesting thing, because it has such a huge influence on, even your own story. And with your example, we would do the work to strip away those stories. And once the stories are gone, then we would look at what you really want without the story and what needs to change, if anything, when the stories are gone.
Yeah. But can you ever be, you know, even if you get to prime minister, president, then there's still faults and flaws and
Of course,
unsurmountable tasks and things that you never get to. You know,
absolutely.
how legendary do you have to be before you can forgive yourself of
I think no matter where you are, who you are, no matter what you do, whether you are unemployed or whether you're the president, the key that I believe for everybody is to build a level of self-love that the identity of who they are and what they do no longer has that impact where they draw so much on that sense of identity that I'm a doctor or a lawyer or a marketeer. It very much becomes more about who they are in essence without the role attached. And I think the way that you can build practices around that is by genuinely like getting to know yourself and those desires, those dreams, those fears, the stories that you tell yourself.
mm,
Helps better inform who you are, what you want, how you can live authentically, spending more time in, reflecting, whether that's like journaling or meditation. Lots of people have different practices, but building daily rituals committed to live an intentional life to better understand yourself cultivates more self-love so you can live from this place that doesn't have a title attached to it.
so you've got voices from your past that you
Mm.
learn to manage.
Yes.
What about the voices of the present, who the people around you? Like, are there tactics of
Yeah,
educating people who aren't saying the
yes.
right things to you, or yeah?
So it's interesting. There's a couple of things with that. I think, yes, there's work that you can do on the past in terms of the voices you bring with you. And even in programs that I work with clients on, I might have a plan for a session and someone will come to me and say, Linda, I know we have a plan, but this week, Jody, you wouldn't believe what she's done. I'm so angry. Can we do a session on that? And so we'll work in the moment, more reactively with whatever has happened that week. And, there can be all different approaches that we take. Sometimes it might be more rational. It might be like a CBT, cognitive-based, behavioral therapy approach where it's the framing of a situation and the reframing and different tools we can do to reframe what's happened. A lot of it, though, comes back to if you have a mindfulness practice, it essentially enables you to make much clearer, calmer decisions and live from a less reactive place. Because a lot of these challenges that arise in a workplace as well are often bred out of a state of reactivity. And if we can live more mindfully and intentionally, it allows you to step back and not take things quite as personally or see things from a different perspective. So from that point of view as well, to be able to separate yourself from, what might feel like a personal criticism, like, in advertising, it used to happen to me where someone would criticize, or what I felt was criticize a campaign and the way it was performing. And I would take that as a reflection of this person doesn't think I'm doing a good job, et cetera, et cetera. And my mind would spiral. And when I worked with my exec coach as well, he really walked me through the ways that you could, if you separate yourself from the commentary and make it about the campaign and not yourself, really they're just looking for ways to improve the performance to help the business grow. It's not a reflection of you. And there's 20 people that have put work into it. So, it's really about creating some space to be able to respond to things, I think, just with that, with less reactivity, with less heat.
Because that reaction will cause that bad energy to go to the next person and the next
Yeah.
person.
And because your mind spirals, you know, one minute you're thinking, oh, John thinks I'm rubbish. Wow, I wonder who else thinks I'm rubbish in the office. Maybe John's talking about it with 5 other people and they're all thinking, and your mind goes off in this absolute tangent. And then the next meeting you're in, you're thinking, God, oh no, wonder what Trevor thinks of me. Maybe he's been chatting to John about it. And it completely gets away on you. So, you know, I think the faster you're able to separate yourself from what happens and look at it more like an observer, or more like if someone else came to you, or if someone in your team came back to you with this, what would you say to them? And to speak to yourself more like that can be very helpful.
So what do you think of the enemies of mindfulness? What stops us?
Good question. Enemies of mindfulness is in, why don't people want to be mindful?
I think everybody wants to be mindful. Hey, it's more that they forget to be mindful, or they're not mindful about being mindful.
Good, yeah, not mindful, being mindful. Look, I would say a surface level response is that people have time for, and everyone's really busy.
Sure.
I think more deeply, as somebody who has been doing this work for a really long time, with mindfulness brings awareness, and sometimes it's uncomfortable to be aware of everything you're feeling and to not live in autopilot, because that might mean making changes that ultimately will make you happier, but that might be hard.
Well, it's another thing to do on the to-do list, isn't it? Like if you've got a big to-do list.
It's like, great, I've got to be mindful and then I'm going to have more to do. What do I want to do that for? I'm trying to get the list down, not add things to it.
Yeah.
Even if it's for a result that ultimately will make you happier and live a more fulfilled life with better relationships with peers, with your partner, with your kids, that people just go, it's too much work. It's easier just to keep going as we're going.
Yeah, okay. And then so how do you make the time? How do you carve out, is it a case of I need half an hour to think about what I'm doing?
I think, have you ever read Atomic Habits?
I have it, but I haven't read it properly yet.
It's a great book. It's by a guy named James Clear, and he has a number of strategies that are so useful in terms of implementing habits. He starts with saying, just do it for 1 minute a day. For 1 minute a day, stop, literally, and just do nothing. If you're trying to bring in mindfulness, to just be present, just start with 1 minute. So the first rule is like, make it easy. And he has other really good small hacks, like what he calls habit stacking. So if you brush your teeth every day, say every day after I brush my teeth, just for an extra 30 seconds, I'm going to be mindful. So add it on to something that already exists. So it doesn't feel like a brand new habit. It just feels like an extension. So make it easy, and habit stack is a really good way, and build your way up to it, because with a lot of habits, it does feel like hard work at the start, but it's like a muscle. It's like going to the gym, and think about it in that way. No one's expecting you to go and just be able to meditate for an hour, and nor do you need to, but think about it more like, yeah, okay, you wouldn't just go out and go for 30-kilometer run, but how can you train? And it can be anything. Start with 2 push-ups is better than none. And he has this other great hack, once you do start to build the habit, you can skip a day, but don't skip 2. So it's just these consistency. He cites quite a lot of athletes who say, I wasn't necessarily greater than anybody else, and I certainly I don't think I was born with anything greater, but what I did have was consistency, and I trained even when I didn't feel like it, and that's what made me different. These Olympians, they credit their success to literally just being consistent.
And then a lot of people have the weight of the world on their shoulders. Hey, oh, I have to do all this as a parent, I have to do all this as in my career, I have to do all this. Whereas if something was to happen that literally you couldn't do that for a day,
Mm.
it wouldn't miss you necessarily.
Mm.
So it's interesting that you feel the need to complete these tasks for the day, the week,
Yeah.
but maybe you don't.
Yeah. And to what end? People are so good at prioritizing everything but themselves. But what often happens is when we ignore our own needs and our own selves for too long, that's when burnout happens, illness happens. The body will stop at some point. It will make you stop if you don't stop, if you just keep pushing through and ignoring like the warning signs. There's an expression I love, which is feather brick truck. And some people say it's God or the universe like sends you signs if you're running too fast and you're heading to burnout, like something will happen, you'll get sick, and that's a feather. That's like being like, slow down, like take care. And it will throw you things until you stop, until you start looking after yourself. And it's the age old, like, fit your mask before you fit anybody else's in an emergency. How can you be expected to be able to drive a team or lead people or be a good mother or partner or whatever it is if you're not looking after yourself and you're not setting that example for the people around you?
Yeah. So maybe it's more than having this magnetism towards economic safety, but more literally running yourself into the ground on sometimes like just
Yeah.
overestimating what you need to do in your life.
That's it. And I heard a great thing earlier. It was just, what do you need to do to make you feel alive? Like, how different would the world be if everyone around you was well and focused on doing things to make them feel alive? And ironically, it's about doing less, not more.
Yeah.
If you look back at the times where you felt most alive and really in flow and just like, yeah, like I'm like, I got this. It's rarely at times when you're really busy and really slammed and there's a lot going on. If you think about a time where you just like, yep, I'm just in my place, usually there's less going on than more.
This is beautiful because I'm actually a little bit ill after the weekend today. So I think after talking to you, it's 3:30 here. I'm probably going to go for a walk after this. And, there's a busy week, but maybe I don't need to do it today.
Yeah, just slow down.
Slow
down, look around, be present, take that time to just take in like the glory of what is around you and see what happens. See how different life is when you walk a bit slower, when you don't rush.
Yeah.
You need some space for that magic to come in, I think.
Mindfulness and mastery. Beautiful. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, lindawallace.com.au, or connect with me on LinkedIn, or my Instagram is Linda Bella Wallace.
That was really good. I really enjoyed that. I think I've got a bit of therapy from it. Talking to you today.
Beautiful.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chat again soon.